Good evening. How are you doing tonight? It's Friday night and I'm feeling fine. I thought I'd come online. Woo. This is the exciting life of Lana. And here I am with my chocolate coconut mousse. Yeah. This is what I do sometimes. I sit on the couch. Hi, Sergey. Sit on the couch. Little homemade coconut yogurt. And I just sit and reflect and listen to podcasts. Because life is introspective. And for me, happy Chinese New Year, by the way. And for me, there's been a lot of beautiful insights and been journaling a whole heck of a lot. I don't know about y'all. I received a direct message from a person who's been following me for a while. And I was like, I feel like I need to do a live with this. How many of you out there find yourselves re-experiencing the same types of patterns? Like you're just like, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep encountering this person? They took advantage of me. That person, they took advantage of me. I'm struggling because I can't tell the difference between the wolf in sheep's clothing or somebody who's genuine. And the thing is that we are all innately good people within us, and we want to believe the same for everyone else. As adults, we still sometimes hold that childlike mentality that everybody who shows up to us is just as kind as we are in our hearts. On the flip side of that, when you are cynical about people and think that they will take advantage of you, these are all our shadow aspects. These are parts of us. Like what we don't like in another is a part of us and is something we have done. What you reject in another, you're going to reject in yourself. And vice versa. What you don't want to acknowledge, accept, and integrate as part of who you are, what you do, not who you are, because you're not really anything of your labels, but you have to be willing to own your shadow. You have to own your worst, darkest traits. And there's nothing wrong with that part of you. You have to recognize that if you don't embrace it all, you're rejecting yourself as whole. You can't just have what you want as who you are. You're all of it. It is all of what makes this being. And what it is, the reason that we feel we get taken advantage of is because it's a repeated trauma. There's a trauma response. We respond to what's familiar. And when I can bring up the whole conversation around empaths. People saying, oh, I feel other people's energies. A lot of times, yeah, but that's your energy too. What you think you feel in someone, I feel other people's pain, is still that unresolved pain within you. I talk about the unhealed empath because they are the ones who kind of go into a martyrdom like, oh, I feel so many people's pains. It's like, whoa. Now you're making it about yourself. It isn't even about the other people and what they're feeling. It's really about you and what you're feeling. That's yours. These are topics a lot of times people don't discuss in spiritual circles or any circles for that matter. The truth is, we all have our hang-ups. We all have our likes and we have our dislikes. And we gravitate toward what is familiar, whether we like it or not. That's a play on words. Gravitating, whether you like it or not, to what you like or not. Think about it. We want to believe that the people showing up to us are going to do better than us. But at the same time, we don't want them to do better than us because then that would outshine us, now wouldn't it? Do you see the tug, push, and pull of this life, the dynamics that are set in motion? It's like We'll say we want the best for others. And then there's an aspect. It's the angel and the devil on your shoulders. We all have it. And there is nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make you any less of who you are. If you're in awareness of it, then it doesn't have control over you. If you're ignoring it, it has full control of you. Because that which you deny is what rises up through you. That which you want to act like isn't a part of you is everything of you. There is your shadow. And if you're unwilling to confront, accept, and honor your darkest parts, what makes you think you're going to shine that much better? That shadow will dim you out when you're not willing to give it the attention it's seeking from you. And your shadow will shine brighter the more you're willing to accept and honor that dark. You see that the dark and the light serve each other. They serve each other in the brilliance. They're aspects of whether or not you're going to shine in your true nature of your soul, or if you're going to crawl away into the darkest parts of yourself and dim your light and mute yourself. That's why most people suffer in silence, because they crawl into the darkest parts of themselves and they're seeking solace because they've rejected that aspect. Looking for something to fix that wound, to console them. That when the wolf shows up in sheep's clothing, it recognizes that energy, it sees it, it feeds on it. And it doesn't even mean the wolf knows what it's doing. Sometimes that's just their role and their trauma response and how they behave and act. But, the opposites, the polarities attract. The victim is sought out by the perpetrator. And the perpetrator is also sought out by the victim. If you're looking for something to complain about, you will find plenty of things. Because where attention goes, energy flows, and it grows whatever you've put your attention upon. I was a negative Nancy throughout the course of my life. I'm not perfect. And I know that when you spot it, you got it. Or you at least recognize when and where you also demonstrated those same behaviors and patterns. Our past serves us. Our mind serves us. When we don't allow the integration of all the experiences we've had and to see the lessons and the blessings in everything, then we're failing to utilize the joys, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows of life that are meant to serve us all the way through. When you just say, oh, I don't want to accept that aspect of myself, then what makes you think you're going to find better aspects along the way? Everything is a cumulative, just this melange, this collaboration of life. We have one experience that leads us to wanting to have another experience that, this happened, so I want to have this happen. A bad thing leads to a good thing, and a good thing leads to a bad thing, and the pain leads to the pleasure, and the pleasure leads to the pain. And what are you willing to do for it? Are you willing to have the courage to lean into what's unfamiliar instead of constantly gravitating to what's familiar and pulls you out of your peace and causes more of your pain? So the wolf in sheep's clothing is always there serving as, what is it you're not willing to look at inside? That there's the mask or the covering or whatever, the veil in front of this presentation, this being, this situation. You have to be willing to remove all that in yourself to see through it in another. Ooh. So when we're presented with the wolf in sheep's clothing, and it gets us excited, or maybe it gets us equally as nervous and anxious, because these are the polarities of our triggers. Our trauma response is emotion, is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And in this case, often, the wolf in sheep's clothing is you fawning over the memory, that heart tug, that connection to someone you admired or a powerful role model in your life that you are still holding out for, still trying to prove yourself to them, still hoping they'll do the right thing because most likely they abandoned you, rejected you, overpromised, underdelivered, or didn't even arrive. Because the wolf in sheep's clothing is just the metaphor for how we're unwilling to see the truth through the lie. That no matter how the lie shows up to you, it's still a lie. It's still not in alignment with you and your truth. So when you know yourself from the inside out, and you're not putting on any mask, and you're not putting on any sheep's clothing, you're not putting on some presentation that isn't even who you are, because that's what we all do. A lot of us are walking out the door and we're putting on a role. Often we're not even realizing that's what we're doing. You know, oh, I have to go on and put my yoga cap on today, or I have to put my spiritual cap on, or I have to put my listening cap on, whatever. It is what it is. The more you sit with yourself, the more you recognize your various flavors, colors, we are all characters. We're all on stage and we're playing roles. So just own and notice where and how you're playing your role. Because the sooner you can identify your roles and how they interplay in your life, the better you can perfect them, at least. And then you can also choose which ones come and which ones go. And if they haven't served any longer, they need to. They need to go. Because when you go within, you don't go without. And that's one of my favorite things to say, is you have to be willing to do the inner work. You have to be willing to go, wow, okay, I guess Miss Sassy Pants is coming out to play today. Maybe today I'm feeling like a poker and a provoker. Maybe today I'm feeling sexy and savvy. Maybe today I'm very coy. And either way, life should be fun. It should be playful. We shouldn't be taking it so darn serious. I dropped my lid. Hold on a minute. See, if I took everything serious, I'd be freaking out. Oh my gosh, is my video not perfect? At this point, I don't really even know. I have my moments where I go, what am I doing? What is my role? What am I serving? How am I serving? I mean, you all know, if you've been following me for a while, social media has been my way to communicate and inspire people. And then I sit there and go, so what is my future? How can I best serve? I do have something in the works with a girlfriend, which I'm super excited about. But in all essence, every single one of us is going through this rebirth in this life. Over this past year, we've all been through the ringer. We've all been like the butterfly. We're in the chrysalis. Ooh, we're building up our courage, our strength, our will, whether or not we're gonna take the step up, we're gonna level up in our lives, or if we're just gonna continue to try to do the old ways of doing things. I mean, when I have a lot of stories I can share where my life was turned inside out and upside down, and to the point where I was like, how the fuck did I make it through that? How did I get where I'm at right now? We all need to do the work to make peace with the root cause of our patterns, or we're going to just keep on continuing them. If you do see there's a pattern, there is hope for you, because at least you are in awareness of it, and the willingness to even just make the small enough change to identify it, honor it, respect it, appreciate it, recognize that it no longer serves you, and then find small ways to try to change how you respond and show up to it when it rears its ugly head at you. The more courage, the more that gives you your power back. The healing work isn't fun all the time. It is like, ugh. And for someone like myself to admit that I never thought I would be the person I am today. Or did I? But that's just me. I mean, I sit with my, where did I think I'd be right now? I had a whole lot of higher expectations of myself at this particular moment in my life. I fulfilled so many of my goals. And my world came crashing down when I lost my job in Italy. And that was the humble pie. And that particular story serves me right now especially, and it brings me a little bit of humble joy, and the irony is that what happened to me 2008, 13 years ago, having served in the military, having been a government contractor, working with other military, I've worked with everybody. And I don't even know if I've ever shared this story, what transpired. I think I may have. Here's the thing. I was extremely good at my job with IT. I'm a systems engineer by trade, IT, Intel environments. I have my bachelor's in computer science. I have my associates in information technology systems. I worked damn hard for my reputation, and I did really fucking well. I negotiated jobs with Northrop Grumman, Antion, CSC, and I did really well as far as money went. I made very smart investment choices. I was very good with my money. And I was known within the community for my resourcefulness, my ability to get the job done. And I didn't have to apply to jobs. I was asked for jobs. Essentially what transpired is I was working with the Navy. My previous job went away, so I took a job with another company. And I had already been working in this environment. And I knew all these players. I knew all the government people. It's a small community. Everybody knows everybody. People hang out together. We're expats in Italy. Some of these people are men married to Italian women. And we have a mix of Italians working with them. I worked in a help desk because I was trying to find a decent position within this company. Prior to that, I actually worked with the migration of their, what they call OneNet. I almost forgot about that until recently when some things came up in the news and I went, oh yeah, So I was part of I've done a lot of migrations of computer systems from one over to the next. And in this particular case, I was part of the migration team for OneNet in the European theater. And because I had familiarity in Naples, I was already there. I kind of was part of the heading up on that, which was really awesome. At a certain point, there was some shady stuff going on between the people who worked for the company. The government was aware, and I was actually communicating with the government guys, and I'll be straight up. I saw the shadiness with the company, and I did not like what was going on, what was transpiring. I'm a straight shooter. I don't gossip. I tell it like it is. That got me in a lot of trouble. And when you're somebody who speaks your truth, it gets you in trouble. Especially in government environments where the boys club is really fucking strong. And the abuse of power, ooh, you scratch my back, buddy, and I'll scratch yours. And the people are only thrown under the bus if they really piss someone off. Saw that when I was in the Air Force too. And in this particular case, there were people that were hired and sent to Italy that were basically people's friends, Hey, they knew people, so they got a job. And they had a bad reputation in their previous position because of the same exact thing, by the way. So there we had some of those people there. I'm not going to get into super details. I'm not trying to call anybody out on this. So when the OneNet transition team was finalized, I gave them notice that I would like to stay, and so they offered me a position. Unfortunately, not one to my level of expertise, which I found to be a little bit insulting, actually. The irony with not being offered those positions was once again going back to they only offered them to their buddies. And because I wasn't in the in crowd, and they were all men, they got hiring preference. Despite my background, my expertise, they got hiring preference. So I started to see the dynamics. And there was with the small union of some of us who were not in the crowd, in the, part of the big boys team, we'll say. We kind of made our own little, do you feel like something weird's going on here? And we were all seeing the same thing. We were seeing the dynamics. There were a couple people who would sit around and just talk about stocks and investing, and they weren't doing any work. And it was deliberate. And this is the kind of abuse of power that when you see it, you're like, people get paid to sit around and do nothing. And yet the hypocrisy of telling everybody else. And if you don't keep your mouth shut, you get in trouble. The backlash, the backstabbing. And it's so stupid. It's really ridiculous. But animosity happens because of the good old boys network. When you see people getting special treatment or getting hiring preferences deliberately in front of your face, yeah, it's rampant. And this has nothing to do with, as far as I'm concerned, you could have been anybody. But if you were part of that club, that was more important. If you weren't, fortunate for myself, I still had my own little reputation of just being kind of there and people knowing me. What transpired essentially was when I got into the help desk, it was a very hostile working environment. And at the time, I had also had a neck injury and I had extreme pain. Me being the strong-ass woman thinking, I've got to work for myself. Never stopped to think about the fact that I was paying for long-term, short-term disability. I was all connected. I had all my, T's crossed, I's dotted, but yet I didn't even know that I could take advantage of what I was doing. How many of you out there have ever done that where you know you're covered, but then you never stop to think about when you needed the coverage to tap into it? That was my thing. Here I am with this debilitating situation, forcing myself to go to work. That should have been my cue. And I started getting targeted at work because I was going to work late and I was suffering with some severe pain. For 4 months, I was on gabapentin and Neurontin. I know I talked about this before. But the reason I was on that was because the nerve pain was excruciating. I couldn't even turn my head fully and I couldn't sleep on my left side. I was on my right side for months, maybe even up to a year. And as a result of all these different things that I was dealing with, gabapentin Neurontin gives you anxiety. It gets you agitated and frustrated, and little things can set you off. But I was more in a witness. Ironically, I could see it happening. I didn't act on it, but I was like, ooh, this is some dangerous stuff. I worked right next to a guy, and this guy, he was a drug addict. He was hooked on what is it, oxycodone or whatever it is. This guy, he was limited with his prescriptions, and I get it. He sat right next to me and he'd tell me how much pain he was in and that his prescription ran out and then he needed more. And I'm like, this isn't healthy. The addiction and the dependency upon pain medications. I witnessed this in this environment. He was also prior military. But we had unruly Navy folks in the help desk who disrespectful language, talking about sex in the office, cursing like sailors, that's acceptable, which it is not. It is not. If you can't control your mouth in an office setting, that to me is not respectable. And it doesn't deserve it either. Your character, how you present yourself, if you're not acting in integrity, then what makes you think you're so almighty? And it was just horrible and sickening to me. I would be on the phone and I'd have people on the phone saying, what is going on in there? And then when I turned my head to ask them to keep it down, they looked at me because I had all these issues. And they were passive aggressive, and they were attacking and acting like I was the problem because I was complaining, when meanwhile I was just relaying a message. And I'm like, listen, if I'm telling you, it's because someone on the phone is overhearing you and repeating it back to me. So you can argue with me, or you can just recognize they will call the supervisor. Like I said, I'm a straight shooter. I don't have time for bullshit. And to me, this was like child games that even children don't play. As a result of this, all this stuff that transpired, one day a Navy sailor who I had already asked him to politely stop using the F word, and used to constantly say, what that, and then even after asking him to not use the explicit, and it didn't come from me. The government people had to talk to him, but I was the blame. Everybody thought it was me, right? It's all my fault. He proceeded to stand up one day because he was upset with me. He had built up all of this emotional unrest and had no emotional regulation, and went off on me, threatening me, standing up, looking down at me as I'm sitting in my chair, telling me how I better watch myself, and that he's got his eye on me and he's threatening me. And I'm like, dude, you got problems. I didn't say anything. I just simply asked him to lower his voice prior to that. So I'm the target of hate and discontent because people can't be personally held accountable or take personal responsibility for their behavior, their actions, their emotions, which, you know what? Nothing is actually personal. In fact, the moment you make it about yourself, you've made it personal. Most of the times, things that happen in life have nothing to do with you, but you make it about you when you think it's personal, when you take it on and you get triggered by it. And this is everything in life. The moment you give your power away and say somebody else is responsible for how you feel, you have disempowered yourself. You've given the other person power over you. You have basically, say it with me, you have put on the badge of victimhood, and you think it's an honor that you need to shine in. It doesn't happen like that. That is the hurt trauma response. And it's a lot of the conditioning out there that has perpetuated and really created this divide that we're dealing with right now. That people want to run around and feel significant. They want to be seen and heard, which is every single person on this planet, as if it's okay to be unkind to others so they can get recognition and attention. That's the unhealthy way of getting seen and heard. Versus there is a way to be seen and heard. There is a way to connect with another person. But if it's, again, familiar to you, toxic relationships, toxic environments, being in an abusive relationship is an addiction. It is a trauma response to what you know. In trauma response, addiction is all about staying in the same pattern. It's I don't know anything else but this, so I don't know how to trust outside of it. It's anxiety, it's depression together. Like, we only stay in what is familiar because the familiar feels comfortable. It's not that it's good for us. It's not that we necessarily like it. In fact, most people will complain about how they dislike a situation they're in, yet they won't make any changes to change it. You know, everybody has a breaking point. Everybody comes to that come to Jesus moment where you're like, come hell or high water, I'm getting the fuck out of this situation. And it's going to start now. See, when you really like put your foot down, when you physiologically feel it, like this shit is done. I'm done living like this. I'm no longer tolerating this treatment of myself by myself. The moment you set in motion that I am going to change this pattern, that this stops here now, it actually sets the energy in motion. But it takes dedication, determination, a willingness to change, and your devotion to you. And the willingness to trust in you, to learn who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, how could you trust yourself? And that's probably one of the biggest problems we got right now, is the majority of people don't know how to trust themselves, yet they're trusting in things outside of themselves. And then they're wondering why they're getting taken advantage of them. Well, if you don't know yourself, how are you going to know another person? Because we only know another person by how we know ourselves. So when we recognize, you have that instant bond, that connection with somebody else, it's because something in them is familiar too. That's how we connect. It's natural. It's nature. It's humans in unity making humanity. That if I compliment you on something, I actually have to acknowledge that if I appreciate that in you, then it's probably in me somewhere too. Wow, that's not a bad thing to acknowledge now, is it? If you really stop and think about it, it's really nice to witness in another person something that is a part of you. That's why we should want to see people happy and see them succeed and not be, oh yeah, I say I want you to be happy and I want to see you succeed, but I have an unconscious program back here that says, well, if they succeed, then I'm a failure. Because we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. If I'm a failure because of your success, that sounds disempowering, doesn't it? That if you succeed, how come I can't celebrate that as if it's my success too? Changing up the way we think about things, like everybody's success is our success also. But other people's failures are also our failures too. That's why humans are meant to come together and serve one another. I want other people to be successful because if you're successful, you're happier. And that makes the world a better place, doesn't it? If I'm successful and I'm happier and the more I can do for other people, obviously that's going to ripple out and that's going to uplift all of humanity in the world. Can anybody see why I keep saying we need to be in unity more now than ever? That the more we're away from each other, the more the divide is causing distrust within ourselves and in another. But if you are in a position to sit with your stuff because you are alone or you are isolated, well, damn, that's some timing. It's about time you sat down with yourself and had a conversation. I just want to say, if you haven't had the time over this past year to sit down and meditate, then you must be one of the busiest people in the world. But because this year has caused every single person to slow down, I highly anticipate every single one of you has no excuse in your book other than you just didn't feel like it or you just didn't want to sit with yourself. But I also get how difficult it is to sit in your own thoughts, because when we do that, sometimes that's a scary shit, especially because most of us don't want to be alone with ourselves. So we seek out other people to kind of like buoy whatever is making us feel a little bit resistant to staying in our situation of quiet servitude, introspection, deep reflection, like, okay, let me just, wow. Like today, I've had this lingering migraine and I have tension that's been in my right shoulder and my neck, pop in my jaw, spraying on the magnesium oil, taking magnesium, eating my edible brownies. Not really eating that much. Not really. I'm not a big eater lately. But sitting with the pain sometimes actually makes it move, gives it permission to, hey, you've been seen, you've been heard, okay, you've been felt. Thanks for serving, thanks for showing up. Okay, what are you trying to tell me? Do you have a message to leave behind? Physical pain has a message in it if you're willing to sit with that. Sometimes it's not so easy to sit with because it causes you to be like me. Snap, crackle, pop, I'm a Rice Krispie. Say that again. Snap, crackle, pop, I'm a Rice Krispie. So going back to the story I was just sharing about Italy. I was fired as a result. Here's the message in this. I was fired as a result of bad behavior, and it wasn't mine. So the punishment rewards system, right? What we live in is a punish reward system. And you're seeing it in full force in the moment. Because essentially, if you're a good doobie and you do what you're told, we will reward you. We won't bully or punish you. A lot of times, we do things because we don't want the punishment. And the reward isn't worth it. But the punishment is the motivator, because that's what we resist. Wouldn't it be nice if we just were able to do things without having to expect the polarity of something good or bad happening? Can you imagine an actual social credit score where if you do or don't do things as you're told, or you don't comply, that you lose money, that you gain money? Think about this, because this is something that's been in the news before, recently. And it really popped up for me the other day when I started reflecting upon how if you just pay attention to social media, there are trolls that are paid to go out and deliberately create hate, create divide, try to poke and provoke you to react and respond to them, to give them attention. And then they'll also report you, even if there's nothing to report, or if they just want to report. This is a game for some people, and they don't realize they're playing with people's lives. But because they have a reward, and sometimes it's more than one reward, they, number one, are getting paid for it. Number two, they're being reinforced in bad behavior that probably they already liked doing. Because there's some messed up people out there that really don't care. And there are hurt people out there hurting other people. So there are trolls running around reporting accounts so that they get banned or disabled or deleted or reported, because you know what happens. 3 strikes, you're out. Oh my gosh. I mean, seriously, if you stop and think about that, like, wait a minute here. I'm not bothering anybody. If you come seeking problems with me, that's on you, not on me. I'm not inviting negativity in my space. And if you don't take responsibility for your behavior, you need to take it elsewhere, because I just don't have time for that. But yeah, this is what's essentially happening. So imagine this. These people are running around reporting on people. It's very passive aggressive. And so you basically are accused by an anonymous keyboard person, keyboard troll, who gets away with it because they get rewarded by not having to be confronted for punishing you. So people out here are being punished by other people who are being rewarded by false accusations, just being hateful, claiming and pointing fingers. I mean, the turns of the table here are really fucked up. Because I was sitting there going, I don't know why people have so much time. And then I'm like, oh, but there's a lot of unhealthy people out there. There's a lot of people who do not have a life of joy. And they get off on this stuff. They get off on seeing people miserable. They get off on how many people can I get banned? How many people can I drag down into the trenches of despair, because misery loves company. And then they have an incentive to do it. So imagine, you just see that. My situation, I'm fired because a sailor is disrespectful, which when I was in the military, that would have warranted an Article 15. Because number one, it was disrespectful and threatening. And number two, it was lack of military bearing, which you can get in trouble for, at least back when I was in the military. These days, I don't know what the heck they're doing. I mean, there's this whole looseness now, but yet there's also this other extreme. See, that's what they're doing. They're playing the extremes on us. There's no middle ground. You can't be just a natural, normal person walking down the street. You must have something wrong with you. Because, again, we live in a culture of there's something wrong with you and you have to prove yourself. So when you throw a race card in there, then you're essentially showing that everybody now has to prove themselves that much more to each other, because that's a distrust card. That's like you can't trust yourself or the other person because somebody else is telling you you can't. And I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe in it. It's divisive. And if you buy into that game, you're just showing that they can get under your skin. And that's all a lie. So losing my job over there, I was essentially told I should fall upon the sword. And the reason the story really came up during this time was going back to this punishment reward system. The good old boys network. That they will sacrifice somebody to save their face. Because later I realized, the government didn't like that I had pointed out that they had a problem with the Navy folks because they were buddies. And if there was a problem with the Navy folks, that reflected on them. I didn't see it that way at the time. I saw it as you're supposed to all be mentors to these young soldiers and you're doing them a disservice. Because there was at least one that came back positive on a drug test and had to be flown back from the US back to Italy so he could wear his orange vest on taxpayer dollars. And I'm sitting here going, you are more worried about you looking bad. See, this is the example of covering up the lie by attacking the person who brings it to the attention. That's retaliation. That's the whistleblower thing. You know, when someone speaks up, they discredit the whistleblower. They attack the individual who brings the information to light. Yep, that's be me. I've done that a few times in my life. I've been on the receiving end of the discrediting based on the fact that I brought it to light. I brought it to the attention. And this wasn't my first rodeo. I'm just naive, apparently. I'm naive to the fact that I think I'm helping. And it turns out I'm a threat to people. A threat to people who lie. How about that? If you are not in integrity and alignment, and I don't even realize it. At those times in my life, I didn't even see it as me pointing fingers at them. I saw it as, listen, we have a problem in the office. We have an individual who is disrespectful and needs to be spoken with. He needs to be held accountable for his behavior. But instead, they rewarded the bad behavior by punishing me. And all that does is perpetuate this idea in this person's head that it's okay to be an asshole. And that, in fact, I get rewarded for it. And that I have a network and a buddy system that they've got my back. And being prior military, I dealt with quite a few occurrences where, as a woman, I had a lot of beautiful people who had my back, and still, I love my military people. You know, it's loyalty, baby. But you also know some of the shit that goes on in there where there are men who still don't believe women should be in the military. And I didn't experience that really in my career. What I did experience was the reverse discrimination bullshit, which I don't think should be a word, but it's a form of discrimination. And it's my personal experience was, oh, you're a beautiful woman, so you've probably had preferential treatment. Caveat that underneath that says, we're going to fuck with you and make you feel what they think I deserve to feel, thinking that I've had preferential treatment. So that I can have a taste of what I should have been treated like. What the fuck? Sorry, I'm cursing. But that one was a really big mind blower. To be thought of as so pretty, and I was always humble. I never considered myself pretty growing up. It took a lot for me to take a compliment. I'm like, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah. I was I was a little timid on my prettiness or whatever. Even if I was in the Miss Maine teen pageant. I essentially just kind of was humble about my appearance. I didn't even put on a lot of makeup, honestly. So when I had that experience when I was stationed in Korea, I was like, there was another woman, she was a blonde woman, and she did get preferential treatment. She said she had to finish her degree, and she never actually did. I don't know, she got out of the job. But somebody looked at me, and the way they treated me was as if I had been treated well in my career because of my looks. And they literally gave me shit. They treated me like crap. They gave me horrible I don't know how to explain some of the stuff that goes on in there. That's all I can say. The way that they behaved toward me was just, it was unkind. And again, I was naive even back then. But going back to what happened in Italy, just to sum it all up, after witnessing what transpired, the person that I was back in those days was seeking justice, and I was upset. And my mother was trying to help me, and we were trying to find some form of a legal course of action. My company, basically, they fucked me. They sold me out. They abandoned me in a foreign country. I had to figure out what I was going to do. They never even gave me a plane ticket to go home. I couldn't even sit with the program manager without having to chase him down to find him. They were trying to avoid me left and right. There was so much shady stuff that went on with the company and then the government, because they had this little riff, because the program manager, he had a good name with some Navy people in the government, and then he had a bad name with other people. It was just this whole little cliquey thing that was going on. And then because of all that, because it was all in the, let's just say it was in the cleared jobs is what we'd call it, I essentially got blacklisted. So when I would apply to jobs, I was having to apply to jobs, and I wasn't even being acknowledged, except for one time. I had 2 interviews where the 2 individuals I spoke to were direct with me and asked me exactly what transpired. And the one was a retired Navy chief, and I explained the entire situation, and he said, "Wow, I get it. I get it. I heard your name and had heard some things." Because, they're not supposed to talk about you. Technically, when you're applying for jobs, they're not supposed to talk shit about you. They're not supposed to do that. But clearly they did, because I couldn't get another job over there in those positions again. In fact, one of my so-called good friends, ex-boyfriends, it was almost like, to a certain degree, he didn't want to be associated with me, as if that would put a mark on him. And he had had his own experience too, where he had pissed off the wrong people at one point. I tried. I approached the Navy. I approached the government. I filed reports. They all pretty much acted like there was nothing they could do about it. Nobody was there to help me. Nobody was there to save me. I was abandoned in a foreign country. Nobody moved my furniture or my stuff or put it in storage or did anything to support me or help me. I had to pay for everything. I had to organize everything. I had to figure out what the hell to do. In fact, there was what did they call that? A bolo? There was supposedly a report. Somebody told me they were looking for me and that I was illegally getting on the base or some crazy stuff. And I ended up approaching it and saying, well, you all pretty much abandoned me, and I thought they were going to do something to support me. No, instead, they try to make me look like the bad guy, when all I was trying to do was seek justice for being fired and treated like crap. I mean, I went to human resources. I tried even through my company. None of them would do anything to help me. Being a female veteran in a foreign country, U.S. government, Navy installation, working for Computer Sciences Corporation. Just saying. That was one of those most interesting experiences in my life. Prior to that, I have some others too, but that one bites the cake because that's what got me back to the United States. And I had no intention to come back here anytime soon. And mostly because I really enjoy living abroad. I love being in Europe. I loved living the Italian life and speaking the language and the relaxation, and it was another life. But with that said, I also recognize how the universe has a tendency to steer me where I need to go. And even at the time, I didn't think, I was like, I thought I was going to be able to find a way to stay. I didn't want to leave. And then I was like, you know what? Clearly this was the best thing that could have ever happened for me, even if I didn't see it at the time. I had a toxic relationship with my Italian boyfriend who was an alcoholic and had some other issues. And even in my own case, I was trying to balance, like, my life outside of work was also tumultuous along with work. And I was meant to do some serious healing work, because what was coming up during that time was the situation with my Parents, I started playing out their trauma drama from my childhood, that literally when I went home, I was sitting there watching the dynamics of my dad with his wife and going, oh, wow, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Claudio was my father and I was my mother, and there was this dynamic of, she knew how to push buttons with my dad, and my dad would react. And I'm not that person. I am not a violent person. And that was probably the biggest wake-up call of my life, when my relationship was to the point of where it was with him. And to be totally honest with you, it turned into one of the most beautiful unfoldings of my healing path and journey, because by witnessing that this man that I was with was a very loving person, despite his own stuff, and here I was living out mine. We came together to help each other heal, because at the end of that relationship, it was a cordial unfolding. He started treating me better. With my shift, with my work that I did in the short time, because I would go back and forth between here and Italy, he started treating me different for every change I made in myself. I didn't try to make him change. I didn't do anything to him. He just responded to my energy and what I was doing. I was able to witness and see it happening in plain sight, that I was able to see myself into a more confident, in awareness woman. It doesn't happen overnight, but the moment you notice there's something not right and you're not happy, you just decide, okay, this is where I'm going to get off the bus and change. And the pause between the buses going on to another one, you don't know when that's going to show up. That could be a while. But it takes the effort, it takes the willingness, it takes the dedication to show up for it anyway, despite how it feels. Oh my gosh. And I was having this whole thing about failures. If you don't fail, how are you going to know success? Failure is success, because every time that we make mistakes, it leads us to the successive improvement upon. Because when we make a mistake, we want to improve upon it. We don't want to just be, here's a great one, held accountable to the past of our mistakes. If we were all, and think about this, because this is what happens in the world, is people are highlighted for the one time they made a huge, it's all over social media, it's all over the MSM, people are just berating the person. You're a horrible person for this one situation. Even when they apologize, they have the scarlet letter and they can't get rid of it. Does anybody really want that to be the case? Because we need to take a hard look at where we're at in the world today. Because if you're unwilling to look at a person with compassion and understanding that they're still human, and that yes, we're all going to be making mistakes, because that is life. But if you don't make mistakes, you will never grow, because the mistake is an indication that you're going to learn something and evolve. That's what creates wisdom. Information, experience, integration, wisdom. When we make a mistake, we should always be given the opportunity to do better. Of course, these are all case-by-case bases. But the truth is that with the golden rule, it is do unto others you would want done unto you. If you see someone makes one mistake, stop and think about it. If it was you, wouldn't you want the person to forgive you? Wouldn't you want the other person to consider that, yes, you too make mistakes, and that you want to be forgiven in the sense that they're not going to continually hang it over your head and make you pay for it? What is wrong with people? Sadistic, masochistic. I want you to suffer more. Like most of us suffer just when we make the mistake, because we're in awareness of our own freaking mistakes. We don't need another person to point it out to us. Why do you think people get passive aggressive and pissed off when someone else points out their mistakes? We really don't need other people to point them out to us, by the way. 99% of the time, okay, that's being exaggerating. Maybe, let's say 88% of the time, we really don't need people to point it out. But if we all could self-correct, we wouldn't have the issues we have in the world. That sometimes it is a good reminder that somebody pulls it into your awareness and says, hey, did you notice that this transpired? I'm not trying to point a finger. I'm just giving you an opportunity to self-correct, and maybe we can, make amends. Every single person should be given that opportunity at least once in a case. If they're a repeat offender, don't get me wrong, and we see patterns, believe them. If someone lies to you numerous times, but keeps telling you how they're still going to do the right thing, are you going to just keep holding out for them to do the right thing? Or are you going to believe them for every lie that they were telling beforehand? That's where the old addictive behavior and the wolf in sheep's clothing comes in, because that's what a lot of people do. There was somebody who didn't follow through in your childhood, and you were still holding out as an adult, thinking that every single person who shows up to you, you want to believe they're going to come through just like that person that you still haven't resolved that issue with. And in that, you're letting the wolf in sheep's clothing show up to you every time, and you're getting a sign. You're getting an indicator in your physiology. Your body is talking to you. It's saying, oh, we've been here. Red flag. At what point are you going to turn around and recognize that the wolf in sheep's clothing isn't lying to you? It's showing you its full face, and that you can stop believing your wish for it to be a different way and believe the way it is. Because that's what's happening, is we have this dystopia, this idea that they're going to do the right thing. We want them to do the right thing, but just because you want it isn't justification or validation enough to hold out hope that they will. You have to get to the point where you start to trust your own intuition and trust yourself and knowing. And again, it comes down to where in your life, maybe you've been the one who hasn't followed through. Maybe really that's your mirror. Maybe it's you are the wolf in sheep's clothing at times, that you're actually seeing the mirror with these people. But only you know that, because all of it's possible. Nobody wants to be rejected. And that's the bottom line. So we all want to be seen and heard and loved and appreciated. We don't want to have our pasts held against us. We don't want our content or our data used against us. That if we're paying for a service to house our information, it shouldn't be open display for abuse and stealing and use of against us. Because the irony is that with everything going on in the world, I know I've seen stuff where you're not supposed to be able to see that, but yet there's no search warrant and there's no legal way to justify the behavior. And something I was walking back thinking about that most people don't consider. Because most people have so much trauma in their lives. And I myself remember when I was younger, I didn't always respond to someone who would catch me off guard and trigger me. I was a very reactive person. So if you got me heated and emotional, I'd be like, I would react. I know that about myself. And a lot of times, and I remember this so well, after the altercation or my blow up, because remember something, when you're triggered, when you're upset emotionally, you're charged, you're going to experience and re-experience every single trauma in your life in that moment. That's why they say when you are emotional, you're irrational. Because at the moment you're in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, triggered, trauma re-experienced here, you are not going to make a good decision. You are in the reactive state. That's when you need to reel it in. Take a deep breath. When you're in awareness, that's the key. You have the opportunity to shift it when you see it. So when you see it arise within you, feel the trigger, you feel the emotion, that's when you need to take a deep breath and go within and notice, what am I feeling here now in this moment? What is this trying to tell me about myself? Because if you take at least a moment to calm yourself and claim yourself, you will not be a victim of your reaction, of your behavior. Because when we're irrational, we make poor decisions and we're open for attack. We're much easier to manipulate. Because once you're in the chaos, when you're in your shit, you can't see past it. You can't see past it because you're so deep in it. It's like, again, you are reliving every trauma you've ever experienced. And when you're in that trauma space, you're no longer present here in the now. You're no longer present in your body. You are physiologically reliving everything in you. Mind, body, soul is in that moment. And every moment that is triggered. When that happens, you have no mental clarity. You're totally out of touch with reality. Is an illusion going on. But when you can calm yourself, claim yourself, and recognize that I am in fight or flight in this moment. You can left nostril breathe. You can taco tongue. Whatever you do, bring it back to the moment and ask if it's true. If you feel it in your body, lean into that space. Ask your body for the wisdom and the grace, the language of it. What is it trying to communicate to you? Because that's where the key is. Whatever it is that somebody else has triggered in you is your work to do, is the healing that you still need to work with. Work through, resolve, confront, honor. That's actually your gift. But most of us, when we're in that fight or flight and we react and we get into the agitation, in my case, I can remember that we end up saying things, number one, we regret. Later on, we're walking away going, oh, I wish I'd said this. Oh, gosh, I wish I hadn't said that. And, oh, I could have said that so much better. And then you get these beautiful intuitive insights after the fact. Because you're in clarity after you're done. And most of us don't really feel that great about how it goes down. Because when the blood pressure's up and the shit goes down, everything goes wrong. It's a crazy dynamic. It's a cycle. It's part of life. It's neither good nor bad. But the truth is, only you have control over how you respond or react. You need to really dial it in to whatever's arising within you. And if some certain things trigger you, the only way to get through it is to confront it, to see it, to not let it take you out of your peace, to not give it your power, to not stoop to the level of another. Like when people trigger you, sometimes it's intentional, trying to get a rise out of you. That's a part of you that you have to work on. You know, I was very I could get into the victim mentality and I didn't even know that's what it was at the time. I'm like, why? Why does this happen to me? Why does this bother me? And I would do a lot of irrational things, I realized, because I was in that constant stress response. Because when you're triggered and you're emotional, you're in stress. That's the cortisol rushing through your blood. You're not meant to stay there permanently. That's why people end up in dis-ease. Cortisol, when it's in your body too long, it's only meant to give you the adrenaline if the saber-toothed tiger is still running after you. If it is a true life or death situation. That's what the adrenaline and the cortisol is supposed to be in your blood for. But the more it's shot in there and it's constantly streaming, it causes inflammation, it causes disease, it causes all sorts of problems. All these hormones get out of whack, and then people are wondering why they're, having issues. We're not meant to live in fight or flight and constant stress. But most of us are doing that, have been doing that most of our life. We don't know any better. So to relax is like, what's that? You want me to relax? I am relaxed. That was me. I am relaxed. What are you talking about? I could tell you I never used to be able to sit still. So sitting in meditation for me, oh my gosh, no. Let's go dancing. Let's go running. Let's go do something physical. And I have to be physical because that's the other part of my energy that needs to shift. I'm 46 years old, but I got plenty of energy in me. I do need more sleep though. I did want to come on and I wanted to let you all know that life is too short to hold grudges, You should be happy and enjoy. You should be able to recognize the wolves and sheep's clothing and all that lovely stuff. So have a beautiful evening. If I don't get on here, Sunday is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. So much love to you. The best Valentine's Day gift you could give yourself is come to my rebirthing on the 21st. Rebirthing from 10 a.m. to noon at Yoga Village in Clearwater. There's my plug. No, seriously. Do whatever you can do that brings you joy. Life's too short. We're not here to take it so darn serious, although we're making it pretty darn serious. Lighten up and know that we need to be in unity, because without humans in unity, we no longer have humanity. Just some things to consider. I love you. I hope you're doing well. Sweet dreams. Good night.